Throughout the COVID disaster, we heard quite a bit from airline industry leaders about what they think the airline industry needs to do to rebuild as the lingering pandemic eventually wanes and a post-COVID world unfolds. In webinars, posts and articles, we heard that cash is king, digitise or die, and structural reform declarations, but no detail about what these axioms intended to convey. Perhaps, though, that was the point, challenging us with self-evident truths and expecting us all to use the statements as starting points for our own thinking. To stop hundreds of airlines coming up with different answers and pulling the industry in different directions. They also said, again with no detail of what it would mean in practical reality, that coordination and harmonisation would be crucial. We wrote about that messaging at the time. The sentiment, though, recognises the obvious. The industry needs a coordinated, integrated plan that delivers against all three of their enigmatic declarations, including the tangible outcomes. Such a plan must galvanise the industry and steer its gaze forward into the future rather than back to its past. It must be more than a wistful vision and must include a real, attainable target with measurable mileposts and benefits along the way. Such a plan would indeed be bold. I'm Michael Bryan, the founding principal and managing director of Closed Loop, and this is the Closed Loop Quick 5. The lack of a bold strategic target for the airline industry creates uncertainty and saps confidence. Such a target, a broad and compelling industry vision, would provide degrees of predictability long missing in our industry. In a recent interview, Bob Crandall, the distinguished retired head of American Airlines, said, "Airlines have driven their expenses about as low as possible. In his view, the only option is more borrowing, more government handouts and major structural reform." He's right, but only to a degree, and degrees are everything in the razor-thin margin world of airline bottom lines. We think there's a lot more to be had. Bob also laments in the same interview not seeing any reformist plan that goes far enough. Challenge accepted. Toward the end of 2019, IATA's members averaged a paltry 3% margin on revenue. The industry hadn't exceeded its cost of capital for 2 decades. According to IATA, only 30% of its members contributed to the outcome. Others were in various stages of distress. In plain speak, they weren't making money. Contributing to this was the massive cost of congestion and capacity, system delays. These costs were mind-boggling, even measured against the cost of the COVID disaster, and they haven't gone away because of COVID, they're merely lurking, waiting. Fixing these things needs a broad and long vision, a bold plan. Such a project is not absent because of some tremendous technical impediment, but a vacuum in macro industry leadership that leaves airlines to fundamentally fend for themselves in a free-for-all that's demonstrably irrational and inefficient. There's no news there. We make the point because everything the industry's leaders' vague declarations call for has an answer, except, it seems, for airlines' inward focus and the collective industry's inertia. So here's our latest Quick 5, a high-level intro to what we think might bring the airline industry's leaders' vague axioms into reality and maybe provide Bob with an answer. This axiom is more a symptom of the problem than being the key to a possible solution. It doesn't fix anything long-term and likely makes things worse. Airline CEOs and their teams are hell-bent on fixing their P&Ls in a revenue at all costs exercise at the expense of everything else. An approach that drives the focus to earnings reporting at the cost of value creation instead of a perhaps counterintuitive consideration of the value of future cash flow generated by intelligent strategy and deft implementation. The first is a short-term approach that might pay off, but could also put the company's longer-term viability in jeopardy by kicking the inevitable down the road a bit. The second approach focuses on the long-term viability of the organisation and regrowing corporate value. Our bosses will have their work cut out for them trying to find a balance between the two, but choosing one at the expense of the other is not an option. Structural reform needs to start at the top, even if some of it will be implemented from the bottom. We think IATA is the right group to lead something that is industry-wide in its scope and long in its vision, and will require the industry to remain unified along its trajectory. Leadership will be crucial to driving the industry's collective will, keeping it on track and on time. We'll have more to say about that in later videos, but assuming IATA can muster, it'll need a strategy for reform, and we think that already exists. Structural reform will be challenging, but it's time to stop musing about it and get it done. While the reform we have in mind will work for everyone, not everyone will want to play the new game. We should take lessons from the past, where missing leadership and industry resolve resulted in less than worthy uptake, ridiculous timelines, unnecessary cost, and diluted benefits. While restrictions to non-compliance have been touted in the past, they've never been imposed, sending the wrong message to airline bosses. The current conundrum between the industry regulator charging off in one direction, while airlines are bolting the other way and both thinking they're doing the same thing, won't work either. It'll take an industry advocate like IATA to manage its airlines and ICAO's bureaucratic pace. Structural reform won't cost the farm because most of the foundations have already been set and crucial segments already exists. But airlines are not exploiting it for their benefit. Why? We think it's because they haven't heard of it and their own digital transformation programs are lagging. One will drive the other, and it doesn't matter which one comes first, so long as something gets started. Data is the key to long-term structural improvement within airlines and the industry, ubiquitously available, carrying all manner of intelligence and integrating so far separate business ecosystems. It is the currency of a new worldview for the airline industry, and data integration is its circulatory framework. The industry's been hung up on buzzwords since the early years of the last decade, and while we've been talking about the same thing, we've spent a decade in analysis paralysis. Who remembers e-enablement and big data? The reality is data, no matter how big or small, is crucial, but absent a well-formed data strategy, programs focus on volume rather than value and risk being meaningless. Airlines and industry need to focus on digitalisation, not digitisation. We've said already that the airline industry's future would be nuanced, and here's another one. Digitisation is merely the first step. It doesn't stop there. This bold strategic vision for the industry won't come in an MCU or any other box. It's not shrink-wrapped software to load on the EFB or the FMC, despite what some will avow. The industry's collective technology first, business second, and systems somewhere down the road, if at all, approach to innovation over the last 3 decades has been a handbrake on real efficiency. Suffice to say here, priorities will change and things will be different. Collaboration has delivered improvements in safety, developments of standards and regulation, and beneficial procedures like CDP. However, most of our collaborative effort is concentrated in a committee for everything system that has shortcomings. Outcomes are stifled because of committee size, turnover and commitment, and the lack of clear plans and business cases at the outset. Some take far too long to do their work, taking decades to evolve results that deliver little. For all the successes, there have been some monumental failures in our committee system. We need to learn from those because those in the know, our industry's leaders, think our survival depends on effective collaboration. Committees are crucial to our industry. We need to get much better at framing and managing them and ensuring a rigorous business case sits at their core, because they'll have much work to do. Meaning perhaps it's also time to consider the future fit of committees and what an alternative might be. Trajectory-based operations is an encompassing global strategic target that will reshape the industry and provide a substantial financial benefit. TBO encapsulates everything we've discussed so far. It's a target that airlines and airline industry leadership, we think that's IATA for those still wondering, should be considering now. Remember all those people talking about the opportunities crises provide throughout the COVID pandemic? Well, here it is. But that means the industry has to agree on what TBO really is, really fast. Because at the moment, airlines and their representative bodies are lagging. TBO is a high-value target for airlines. We've just seen IATA's latest $181 billion estimate of 2020's losses because of COVID. But does anyone recall what the industry was losing in the scarcity-driven system delays of 2019? It's astounding that the industry has not been bellowing about it for years because of the mind-boggling numbers associated with it. Did airlines not notice, or did they simply feel that it was out of their control and ignore it? TBO will change the industry. The flight will become the centre of everything. It will deliver predictability and efficiency to just about every aspect of the airline operational ecosystem. It encourages airlines to develop and share data across the airline and the industry. TBO will reduce congestion, delays and operating inefficiencies globally and bring certainty to schedule and connections. Its reach will eventually encompass the entire passenger journey. Everyone will benefit by fine-tuned outcomes in the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, focused on shared responsibility for air traffic management instead of control. It comes with huge potential, but also carries with it massive implications. It's complex, but not necessarily complicated, at least for airlines. But TBO will require a wholesale change to the way we think and work. We'll be breaking it down and unpeeling the onion over coming weeks to uncover the many facets of its reach and effect on airlines and the airline industry. Why now, amid the biggest crisis to befall the industry ever? A more agile and resilient airline industry on the other side of COVID won't happen overnight, and the industry's lacklustre record of implementing stuff means it's time to get going now. But there's something else that ought to be lighting an afterburner under airlines. Airlines are no longer alone in their demand for space in the air. New airspace users operate on different business, financial and customer imperatives than airlines, and COVID isn't their most significant issue. Their operations are growing faster than most realise, and these groups are already looking to TBO as the answer. Unless airlines get moving now and take a leadership role, the industry could wake up from COVID and find that TBO is already the new usual. If we don't want to close the barn after the horses have bolted and deliver a failure before we've even started, the industry needs to corral the herd. That will take a honed strategy instead of a few good ideas, strong and decisive leadership, and a crack team to keep the drive on track and round up the strays with the right methodologies and tool sets to implement it. Full-time 4D trajectory-based operations were initially scheduled for the late 2020s before being pushed back to the early 2030s because other things were going on, not the least of which was airlines not picking up on its urgency. Now, COVID has set the industry back to its stone age. But for TBO, it doesn't matter. TBO is undoubtedly a bold strategic target, one that could unite and reignite the industry as it unfolds into its future, the new usual. The more you look at TBO, the more you realise that almost everything sits underneath it. Whatever it ends up being called, TBO is also inevitable. It will develop despite airlines' malaise for industry-wide undertakings. Whether it grows as a comprehensive, unifying, universal solution or a fragmented and disorganised collection of good ideas, but not much else, is right now up to airlines and the industry's leadership. Good morning, Mr. Walsh. To break it all down, Closed Loop has built a set of tools that map the different pieces, the related and interconnected nodes of the journey, providing guidance and structure to airlines and the ability to review an airline's individual journey against industry peers. Knowledge, methodology, plans and tools all available now. What's missing is industry leadership, an imperative and the collective will to get moving. Why is that?